Friday evening in America's second city. As the light fades, its frontline troops prepare for battle.
Okay, let's see. We got Hetman, Del Raso, 41, Kariakis, Esposito, 42, O'Sullivan, Gallagher. Okay, tonight on the shooting on Crenshaw, we had an individual last night. He turned himself into Area 4. We have one suspect, and there's 2 at large still. We're trying to find out the identity. There's no identity at this time, okay? Go out there, be careful.
Had 2 good shootings last night.
Yeah. 3-year-old gunshot victim shot in the groin. The other one was police shot a runner on a motorcycle was fleeing. He had a gun. A little bit of a shootout, and he lost.
You know, if it doesn't rain tonight, all hell's gonna break loose. Cause it is Friday night. It's a 3-day weekend. Columbus Day on Monday. Everyone just wants to get stupid right away.
Will she get a line, Sheriff? She get a line?
The gunshot wounds that we're seeing represent higher velocity firepower that produce more severe injuries. Overall, you see a conversion from a low velocity civilian weapon to more higher velocity fire of a more characteristic of a military weapon.
Fired at Rockwell and George. It says 4 shots heard in the back of the corner building near the alley. California?
We used to see a lot of sawed-off shotguns. That was about as sophisticated as they got.
You guys got it? Yeah, we got it. Good job.
Now, it's very seldom that you see a gun that isn't a semi-automatic handgun.
Former piano teacher Stephen Young admits he's rusty these days. He and his wife Maureen are now full-time campaigners for nationwide gun control. They have been ever since the June day 3 years ago, when their oldest son Andrew drove down to the local store with his twin brother Sam to cash a check. Across the street, a group of young gang members were looking for trouble.
These kids threw a brick at the car and they yelled something at him, and Andrew yelled something back. But what they didn't know is one of the kids in this group had been told that in order to be initiated into this gang, he had to shoot somebody.
As Andrew and Sam drove off, 2 gang members followed on a bicycle.
And they caught up to him in about a block and a half because they were stopped at a red light. And the kid just hopped off the bike, walked up to Andrew as far as I am from you right now, and shot him point blank with his shoulder, and it went straight through his heart.
Andrew Young, aged 17, died before his brother could get him to the hospital 2 minutes down the road. Like everywhere else in America, violent crime in Chicago is declining. Even so, last year there were 536 murders committed with guns in Chicago. A few of the victims are as randomly innocent as Andrew Young. The vast majority are members of the Hispanic and African-American gangs that rule the streets and the grim public housing projects of the inner city suburbs.
There's 2 different types of gangs over here. There's a new breed gang and there's a vice lord gang. And neither of them get along. And a lot of times what they're fighting for territory is to sell their dope is basically what they do, a lot of them.
Routine police patrols like this usually find the birds have flown.
Sometimes they'll sell dope in the hallways. Usually when you come up, they'll see it, they'll run. So that's basically what we do here. Just search to make sure nobody's committing any crimes.
Fortunately for police, shootouts between them and the gangs are rare.
You know, they get their automatics, they get their machine guns, they got their shotguns, they got everything. You know, we just carry these little 9mm, that's all we got. So it's definitely an advantage for them.
14211421.
What's your name?
421.
What is it? How do you spell it?
Meanwhile, in a north side suburb, George Figueroa and Frank Skrock of the Gang Investigation Section are making life miserable for a new member of the Imperial Gangsters.
What's your nickname?
2000 North
What is it?
Milwaukee.
Cheeto.
Show
Cheeto.
with injuries by your Roman.
Cheeto, let's see the ID that you got.
It's George's job to know every member of a gang that's hundreds strong and has territories right across the city.
When you listen to me, when you got arrested under his name?
Put your hand down so I can see your face.
You told me you got
Don't worry
arrested for a week. Have you ever, listen to me, have you ever been arrested at any time?
He knows their real names and their nicknames, their habits and hangouts and feuds. And he's not a fan.
The gangs are so entrenched in some of these neighborhoods that honest, law-abiding citizens are afraid to say anything for fear that their houses are going to be burned down or their children will be victims of drive-by shootings.
It's been a serious crime for years to own or buy a handgun in the city of Chicago. But where there are gangs, there are guns.
I'll give you an example. When we turn the corner here, this is a building where a lot of people like to hang. This gun could be half a block away. It could be under one of these cars, under the hood, inside one of the cars. Well, here we go. Here's what I'm talking about, right here.
And what would they be needing that gun for?
For protection. They want to protect their turf because the more turf you have, the more dope you can sell. And the more dope you can sell, obviously, the richer you're going to become.
It's just a part of life. It's just like your regular day schedule. This is my regular day schedule. Come on, hang out, see what's up.
George Figueroa prevailed on two Imperial gangsters to talk to me.
You reckon it's a dangerous life?
Yeah, it is dangerous. Because, you know, people could come shooting over here. You could lose your life, you know what I'm saying? My friend and somebody else, they got shot. I don't know, you know what I'm saying? They were
joyriding, man.
They were joyriding and they ended up in the wrong spot, you know?
It wasn't another gang, it was just...
Yeah, it was another gang.
You know which gang?
The Latin Kings right there.
So do you have a lot of wars with Latin Kings?
Yeah, that's a war that's on for life.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's a war that's on forever. It ain't never gonna stop.
I'm not the one that starts it, you know what I'm saying, or any of that. It's just, you know, people come to shoot you, you know what I'm saying? You don't know, we could be walking around right now. You guys, you know what I'm saying, we could just be going in the store. Some car just come past shooting at us, you know what I'm saying? Hey, that's just the way it goes, man. That's how gangs are.
Around 1,000 illegal firearms are confiscated each month on the streets of Chicago. They end up here at the police forensics department, where they're minutely inspected and test fired so that markings on the bullets can be recorded. Then they're destroyed.
What we have here are all the firearms that we've recovered since September up and through today's date. And each
With the help of the Federal Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco and Firearms, the ATF, the Chicago police trace each weapon to its original purchaser.
This would be a representative sample of what we've collected.
Most of the guns are not old or stolen from legitimate owners. They've been bought quite recently in the state of Illinois.
This happens to be a .45 semi-automatic pistol. And we have one in here which is 9mm and is capable of firing 50 cartridges.
50 cartridges?
50 cartridges can be loaded into this drum magazine, yes sir. And it'll fire as fast as you can pull the trigger.
Outside Chicago city limits, anyone who possesses a firearm owner's identification card, an FOID card, can legally buy almost any kind of weapon.
Another high-capacity firearm that we have, it is very popular among our gang members, is an Intratech. This is also 9mm and has a magazine capacity of 32 rounds. So again, you have high firepower right here.
A convicted felon cannot get an FOID card from the Illinois State Police. But that hasn't stopped the gangs from buying guns.
Look at someone who has a legit person who's never been arrested. And I say, listen, here's $300. I want you to buy me that semi-automatic handgun. Whatever the change is, you can have it. Maybe the guy will pay $250 for it. Say, run him. Well, the guy just made a $50 profit. They'll do it for money. That's where the straw purchases come in, where someone who can buy a gun will for the person who cannot.
6 years ago, in this gun store in a western suburb of Chicago, a straw purchaser by the name of Mariano Di Vittorio bought the gun which killed 17-year-old Andrew Young. The real buyer, a Chicago gang member and convicted criminal, was standing right beside him at the time.
The owner of the gun store asked the criminal, "Can you fill out the 4203 form, which is the background check form? 1 yes, and you can't buy a gun." He said, "I can't fill that out." But anyway, in spite of that, the dealer brought out about 6 guns, and they finally decided upon a Brico 9mm. And then, as they filled out the paperwork with the identification card of Di Vittorio, who was fronting as the buyer, the criminal passed the cash in full view of the dealer to the buyer. And then 3 years later, that gun was out in the street. It was in the hands of a 15-year-old, and it cost my son his life.
Di Vittorio has since been convicted of gun running, but the store is still in business, which is why Stephen Young is suing it. Wearing a concealed microphone, I asked the manager if he wanted to talk on camera about the case.
It's all under litigation. Any information you want to know about Cook County laws, I would suggest you go right to the horse's ass.
It's not surprising that Brighton Johnson's gun store wouldn't comment, because they have a much more powerful opponent than Stephen Young. The city of Chicago itself is suing them in the civil courts for creating a public nuisance. The location of Brighton Johnson's gun store exemplifies the problem that's faced by the city of Chicago. Where I am now, I'm within the city limits, where it's illegal to buy or own a handgun. But that street that I've just crossed is the city boundary. Beyond it is Cook County, where the gun laws are much more lax. The Chicago City Police Department have long suspected that a whole string of gun stores strategically placed around the city limits have been knowingly and routinely supplying the Chicago gangs with guns. Their problem was to prove it. So they set up a remarkable undercover sting operation which targeted this store among many others. It was codenamed, perhaps rather dramatically, Operation Gunsmoke.
What we did was we got several police officers and put them in roles of obvious gangbangers or other criminal types, and sent them into gun stores with fake driver's licenses, identification, and in a course of about 64 days of actually buying weapons, we purchased over 170 weapons, utilizing 3 officers doing the purchasing.
Operating outside their own jurisdiction, the Chicago police weren't authorized to use concealed microphones, but they did tape some of their encounters from outside the store. In this case, the 2 African-American customers are policemen posing as gang members. The shorter one has a firearm owner's identification card. The taller does not. But the gun shop counter clerk willingly lets both handle a variety of weapons, itself an illegal act. It's the man without the FOID card who actually pays a deposit on the guns, although the gun dealer willingly records it as a purchase by the FOID card owner. Obvious straw purchases like this are bad enough. Worse still, the police claim, they made it perfectly plain to the dealers that the guns were to be used for criminal purposes.
The conversations that took place between the officers and the dealers or the counter people in the stores were absolutely revealing and amazing to us.
B&H Sports is just one of 12 gun dealers targeted by Operation Gunsmoke, and in this court document there are pages of evidence of conversations that allegedly took place between undercover policemen posing as gang members and the sales clerks here. This is just one of them. An undercover policeman says to the sales clerk that someone owes him money and needs to be dealt with before he leaves town. He needs, quote, to get a tech for his ass. A second undercover policeman agrees that they have to, quote, take care of business today. The sales clerk recommends an Intratech 9mm assault weapon that can fire 100 rounds per load. He tells them, quote, you made a good choice. This will take care of the business. This is not an illegal handgun. It's a very expensive Swiss-made pistol bought for his own use by expert target shooter Joel Ostrander. Mr. Ostrander says he has great respect for firearms. But as the lawyer representing B&H Sports Gun Store, he has no respect for Operation Gunsmoke and its alleged evidence.
What I'm saying is that the conversations that they made are fabricated, because I know in the instance of my clients that what they say happened did not occur. They will not sell to a gangbanger. They will not sell to a dope dealer. They cross T's, they dot I's. They don't take prisoners. When it comes to a gun sale, they will throw them out of the store.
Is that the case?
That is the case.
So essentially, the police have been fabricating this entire...
That's correct. They've been doing a lot of that lately. And if you take a look at the suits against the city of Chicago and the problems that police department has, I think they're second only to the Los Angeles Police Department.
How close?
Like big city police forces the world over, Chicago's finest have a reputation for cutting corners when it suits them. And the gun dealers' lawyers will try to make the most of it.
Are you badass? You ain't badass.
Carlos, you're under arrest, dude.
Okay.
All right? You're gonna show me up, I'm gonna show you up. That's how this shit works, all right?
But the undeniable fact is that guns are here on the streets in huge quantities, and most of them are being sold by the same handful of dealers.
Oh, this guy, we had problems with him once before, too.
Carlos?
Yeah, he's a mush.
Carlos
is it easy to get a gun if you want one?
I mean, not really. I wouldn't even know. I don't know about any of that, but...
So you wouldn't know how to get a gun if you wanted one?
Nope.
Come on.
No, with no guns.
That's not true. The taller kid is out on bond for a gun case. I'm not familiar exactly with the case. I know that when he was arrested, he had a pistol on him. The smaller kid, I hit his house with a search warrant. We got drugs out of it and another gun.
And these kids could get guns just about any time they wanted them?
Oh, sure they can. Sure they can.
How?
They get guns
2933
from...
North Rockwell, shots fired. All black goatee, westbound.
That call proves to be a false alarm. But at 1:10 in the morning comes a call that isn't. We catch up with the ambulance on its way to Illinois Masonic Hospital's trauma unit. The victim is a 17-year-old member of a gang called the Spanish Gangster Disciples. He's been shot twice through the heart by a 9mm semi-automatic pistol fired by a member of a rival gang.
All right. Sarah, drive in, please. Can I get a bike card? Joanne.
Turn on the right side and turn on.
The team doesn't hesitate. With scalpel and shears, they open the chest wall and expose the heart and lungs.
I'm ready. Okay.
There's no cardiac activity.
They begin desperately clamping arteries and manipulating the heart by hand.
Try not to touch the heart too.
Who's giving drugs?
It's expensive, high-tech medicine that the patient has no way of paying for.
We got a line here in just a minute.
The taxpayer will foot the bill.
He has a pulse. We've got a great carotid pulse.
After 20 long minutes, almost miraculously, the patient's heart begins to beat again.
Look at it, picking up.
Yeah.
Good work, guys.
Right on.
Yeah.
All right. It's a little premature.
They know that the odds are still heavily against their patient's survival. And even if he lives, he may well be disabled for life. In that case, the cost will run into millions.
Check his blood pressure.
Did anybody give a
We as adults are coming together to protect our children. And all these children are our children. It doesn't matter how young they are, doesn't matter what color they are, what religion, it doesn't matter where they come from. And when you pick up a newspaper, you hear about a child getting killed, another one getting shot because of drugs. Enough is enough. That's what it is. Enough is enough.
Hello.
Mayor Richard Daley has certainly had enough. Each Saturday morning, in community after community around the battered edges of his city, he tries to rally concerned citizens to fight the gangs and the drugs and the guns.
We want peace! We want peace! In the street! In the street! Up with hope! Up with hope! Down with dope! Down with dope! Up
But Mayor Daley knows that what's needed is a change of heart far beyond inner-city Chicago.
In the street! In the street!
That's why his city and 24 others are suing not just the small-time gun dealers, but the firearms manufacturers, domestic and foreign.
Down with dope! Down with dope!
Colt and Smith & Wesson, Beretta and Glock have been scooping profits from the illicit gun trade in Chicago, he says. And he wants them to change their ways or pay for the lethal consequences.
They were selling guns outside the city and type of weapons, and they know they're coming in the city. Simple as that. That's called a public nuisance. If they're sending X amount of weapons each week and each month, enormous amount of weapons outside the city of Chicago, they're not ending up in California.
To Joel Ostrander, it's absurd to blame the gun makers just because some people misuse their products.
We could take the same theory and sue automobile manufacturers because if you don't have cars, you don't have drunk driving. Or let's do this one, the silverware manufacturers. Let's sue them because forks cause obesity. That's the same rationale that they're using with this piece of metal. Actually, I think the ulterior motive, and I think it's pretty well obvious to everyone, is that by bringing all of these suits, they're trying to bankrupt the gun makers and the entire industry.
A lot of times when they're use a weapon against a police officer, it's always been, for the most part, it's been a handgun.
There are certainly plenty of people in Chicago who wouldn't be sorry if every handgun manufacturer in America followed Colt and got out of the business. Of course, that won't happen. But those who remain, say the activists, must be made accountable for the mayhem their products cause.
For me, it almost feels like a river of violence, and at the mouth of that river are the manufacturers.
I think somewhere along the line we're going to get a major breakthrough which will bust these guys right down to their shorts, and they're going to have to pay up. Then they're going to stop pumping these guns into the streets when they have to start paying for it.
He's got no heart rate.
For now, it will be his grieving family that will pay for Gilberto Arellano's funeral. 40 minutes after his heart was restarted, it stopped again, this time for good. In the small hours of the morning, the doctors declared him dead.
How many calls? 223. Yeah, 223.
In the bloodless columns of the City of Chicago's crime statistics for 1999, Gilberto Arellano will be listed as homicide victim number 513.